Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgianna.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about seeing clearly. We're going to give you a simple tool that will help you see more clearly in your life and relationships. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live at wholeheartedloving.com. And without further ado, we will get into the self-connection practice for this episode.
So will that be the motorboating thing?
It could be. What's the same and what's different about your...
Well, I heard, Steph, you make that sound that I'm going to say I can't make. So can you do it for us? Yeah. So this is my attempt.
Cute.
It doesn't work like... I think I can make my lips do that thing. So I heard you do that. I saw you do that. And it reminded me of like swimming lessons as a kid, like making that motorboat. Do you know that song?
I don't think I do.
Motorboat. I don't know. And you like blow bubbles in the water or something. You go around, dance around in a circle in the swimming pool. But seeing you do that brought such a joyful delight to me in that moment. And I was like, oh, I want to do that too. And then I was met with, I can't do that. I remember now. I can't make my face do that. And then so I think I did it with my finger then. I was like, you know, and if you're not watching us, I'm wondering, Steph, if you can help describe what I'm doing, because how would you say?
You are pushing out your lips and waggling them with your fingers.
So that it makes that sound, that thing we did as kids, right? And then I saw you do it, but you did it like I did it just with the tip of my finger on my lips. And you were doing it with like your whole side of your finger, right?
Yeah, like if your finger was a mustache and then it became a lip wobbler.
But the reason I wanted to bring this in as a body practice is it started making me laugh right away when we did this and watching you. I was like, oh, that like playful delight came, you know, that I'm just being silly as a kid, making silly noises, and we can still do that today as grown adults. And it's, I always like finding the things that can change your mood quite quickly with very little effort.
Yeah.
And
this is an interesting, yes. Yeah. The mood changing, it's really nice to have access to a state change activity. But from the perspective of what we want to talk about today, the same, different. It's interesting that you're bringing up this thing that you're doing now versus what you might have done as a kid. And you've kind of walked this line of learning how to be silly in public as an adult professional, or like ever, you know, be silly where anyone can see you. So that's kind of feels like an interesting launching off point when you're going like this. What's the same and what's different compared to when you were a kiddo in the swimming pool?
I think what's one thing that's the same is I still think I'm not very good at it. One thing that's different is I think in the past, if I wasn't very good at something, if I couldn't do it the way I thought it was supposed to be done, I would, one, feel bad and feel embarrassed. And two, I just wouldn't do it. And that was actually quite a common thread in my life. When I noticed that I wasn't very good at something, I would just quit and not do it. And what's different about today is I don't feel embarrassed. I'm like, my face just can't do that thing that your face can. And I'm fine with that. It really elicits no yucky feeling in me. Whereas in the past, as a kid and as an adult, when I noticed I couldn't do something that someone else could, not everything, but some things, I would just have this yucky feeling inside. It wouldn't feel nice. And I might feel embarrassed, and I might feel embarrassed to admit that or let anyone know that. And I might want to actually push that feeling away of like, oh, that's not a nice feeling to be aware of something I'm not good at doing or can't do. Whereas now what's different is I can just openly say to you, and laugh about it. Like, I can't do that. I can't make my face do that. I mean, maybe with some practice, but at this moment in time in my life, I can't make my face do that. And I'm
Yeah.
okay with it. So that's very different. And then another element that's very different is just the fact that I did it with my finger. Like, I knew, like, I can't do it the way Steph does it, but I can do something similar. And just doing that, even right now, doing it again, it brings a smile to my face. And that's what's different. The fact that, hey, didn't do it the same way. I can't do it like her, but I can find a different way I can do it, and or a different way I can do some version of it, and I'm having fun. And those elements are all very different.
Yeah. And that is such a neat thing to have access to, because I don't think it's unusual at all for people to just get locked in these old patterns, right? So if you had a pattern of, oh, I can't do that thing in the same way, you might feel shameful and embarrassed and not good enough. And it would be a perfectly natural human response to just carry that forward for the rest of your life unexamined, right? But
Mhm.
what you're saying is that you've been able to pause in your life and notice what's actually present within you. And instead of being locked into that guilt and shame and not enoughness spiral, you can actually access what's present right now, which is that you feel a bit delighted.
Yeah, which is nice. In particular, I think what is meaningful for my life is in noticing the difference in, I can't do it like somebody else, but I can do a version of that. And I can do a version of that in this other way and feel delight in it. And the reason why I'm saying it's meaningful for me is I don't think I ever knew that was a option, a possibility of like, oh, I can't do it quite that way. But like, could I experience some version of this? That might be nice. That was just
Mm.
off the table because I was so stuck in my shame and, well, if I can't do it perfectly or I can't do it like that, then I don't get to experience this thing. It
Yeah.
was so black and white for me. So I've really worked hard in practicing looking for ways that I can create experiences for myself where I get to live more in that gray, that in
Mm.
between. And it makes life feel more fun and easier and not so
Yeah.
full of pressure.
Yeah, and less exacting. I think you're reminding me of my own past perfectionist tendencies, which in so many ways I embodied, and which in so many ways I also just feel reviled by. People who look really perfect and symmetrical, I just feel like a sort of a distrust, a disbelief, and certainly not like an eager attraction. Whereas in the past, I probably would have thought like, oh, the more symmetrical, the better, the more attractive they must be to me. Now I'm like, actually, I like things a little weird, you know? I like things a little off center. And those are just great things to notice. There were too many rules for me before, and I don't actually subscribe to them now that I've paid attention.
So you find that allowing yourself to not follow so many rigid rules maybe feels more freeing to you
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
opens you up to like who and what you want to be connected to in life.
Yeah. So, like, when I think of things in terms of what's the same and what's different, I might find a certain aesthetic attractive. Like, I don't know, let's say go for something really simple like the decor on a mantelpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be perfect. But in the past, I might have imagined that to mean a certain, like, let's go with the Martha Stewart something. And again, with symmetry, there might have been candelabra on either end. And now I'm like, no, I want things a bit off center. It's still perfect. The same is that it still feels perfect to me. And what's different is that it's visually or structurally set up quite differently. The perfection is not in the exacting nature of how I want something to be carried out. It's more of a feeling.
Right. So that's neat. So you still want it to be perfect through your experience, but how you come to perfect is what's different, or one element of what's different.
Yeah, the feeling of perfection. That's interesting, even going into it in more detail now. Like, what would have felt perfect to me before wouldn't have been a sense that I had. It would have been someone else's set of rules that I applied to what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm. This is funny about perfectionism and symmetry and like exacting. This is a little bit off topic, but related. It reminds me of the story once with my hairdresser, and she's been my hairdresser for a long time, like over a decade, I think. And one day, years ago, she said, remember that time when every hair on your head had to be perfect in your mind? Everything had to be exactly symmetrical on both sides. And like, and you know, she would do her best. And then she would also say, and you're human with a head of hair, and things are going to fall in different places, and it's not going to exactly fall in the same spot every time. And I had a hard time with that. Like, I understood that, but I had a difficulty in accepting that. And then years later, she's like, isn't it funny now that that's not a thing for you at all? Like, you actually like that it's not the same on every side, and every strand of hair isn't in its perfect place. And we had a good laugh about that. You're right. So what's the same might have been, I still want to feel put together. And what's different is my idea of what's put together has changed and widened and evolved so that, yeah, things don't have to be as precise and exact, to the point where there's certain things in life that need to be precise and exact, and that's not one of them. And not like, for me to spend time in my day or my morning concerned about whether my hair is symmetrical at this point in my life seems like not how I want to spend my time and energy.
Yeah.
And so
That's
that's very
pretty
different.
key, right? At this point in my life, right? All of that changes. You're reminding me of getting ready for high school in the morning, putting on makeup and needing things to look a certain way that just now I just could not care less. Just would
Mhm.
never spend my time doing things that way. And this is kind of what we're wanting to get into: flow, freedom, presence, really
Mhm.
being able to see what's in front of us in
Yeah.
lieu of our past ideas about what's in front of us. When we're noticing patterns in our life and relationships, and we're
Yeah.
thinking, oh, here's this old thing again. Oh, they're doing that again. We've made that decision before we've even let the moment play out to see what's in front of us, right? So when we're talking about noticing similarities and differences, there's this really useful application for these simple practices in your relationships and in your interactions. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So I find that what you and I do is we take tools and ideas, and we practice them in our life, and we share them with people. But these tools have so many ways they can be used in different areas of our life that all help life feel a bit better. And you and I have shared the same different tool in different ways at different times. But today I wanted to apply it to something that's been going on in my life and share, like, what a difference it's made for me to be able to apply something as simple as noticing what's the same and noticing what's different. And then I think I'll share a little bit maybe about what it's been like seeing clients use it, seeing people that we lead in group use these practices. But first, maybe I'll set the stage. And I have permission to be talking about all of this, but I'm mostly going to talk about, I think, from my own personal experience and perspective, which is the last couple days, week, I don't know. I've been like in a bit of a funk mentally, emotionally. And part of it, I would say, is related to, I think, shifts and change in perimenopause and hormones changing and stuff. Part of it, I think, is also human nature, the way our brain sometimes likes to latch onto something that doesn't feel great and then spin it and turn it and churn it into something bigger and more yucky feeling. Are you familiar with that experience in life,
Oh,
Stephanie?
not I.
And I was noticing, like, why am I so oriented to the not good right now, the not good feeling? Because that's not sort of generally how I'm wired. But I was noticing, hey, my brain the last couple of days seems to be orienting towards the what's not right about this situation. And it's causing me to feel yucky inside. And so I decided to just start tracking what my brain was doing. And this is what was happening. So, as you can probably tell on this podcast, and if you were to know me in person, I like to talk. And I like when people like to talk back and talk to me, and where conversation flows. And it's been really important to me, like connecting, like talking with depth has been a huge part of connection for me. It makes me feel loved. It makes me feel alive. It makes me feel engaged, and it makes me feel close to people. And I think I'm just wired like that temperamentally through just who I am. And then I think conditioned a little bit that way because that was something I really felt I lacked in childhood, like in my family of origin. I to a family of talkers in general, and not born into a family, if people are talking, that it's of depth and emotional connectedness, right? If we talked, it was much more practical, much more about instructions and warnings and things like that. And I always craved more talking and more really knowing someone and knowing someone through talking. And then guess what, Stephanie? I have a history of choosing partners who, yeah, you're laughing already, who are not that talkative or talk very much on a practical, logistical, logical level. And then the universe did this other thing to me. It had me birth two children who are also not naturally wired temperamentally to just be talkers.
And you've got me also. I'm also.
And then, and bless all these people in my life because I love them all. But recently I was like, man, and now like another person in my life where like, I just want you to come talk to me about every single thought and feeling in your mind. Like that would make me the happiest person in the world. And that's just not how this person is wired. And my brain then goes to, is this going to happen again? Where I'm in a relationship where I feel like this part is really like this need and desire is really not being met. And like all these other relationships didn't work out. And I felt so sort of empty and alone and disconnected in all these other relationships. Like, is this what's going to happen again to me? And and then more thoughts like, why do I always have to be the one that prioritizes and initiates conversation and helps us get to this level of depth of connection because I'm willing to ask questions and ask follow-up questions. And like, my head just kept going to these places and I don't want to be the one that always has to blah, blah, blah. And I was starting to feel really yucky. And I thought, well, why don't I think about all the lovely things about, this person? And I was thinking them and they were true and I was feeling them more. But like it just wasn't enough to like that tipping point. I couldn't find that tipping point. It felt like I was trying to negate something that felt off for me by trying to focus on what's good. And I was actually in the shower this morning and this is coming to me and I'm like, you know what? Let's do a little bit of same different. And so I'm in the shower listing off what is the same about each of my previous partners and my parents and my children when it comes to not talking very much and not sharing too much emotionally and not sharing too much of their inner world and what's been the same. And I listed those things out. Oh, this is the same and this is the same and that is the same. And I was like, okay. And it felt good to list it out because it was sort of like validating my experience, right? Of my experience in connection to these people. But then I was like, let's look at what's different. What's different with my person now when I contrasted to all these others? Even if I were just to look at past partners, what's different? And I came up with so many things that were different. And all of a sudden, as I was listing each one, I was like, that's interesting. I feel a little bit better and like genuinely better. Not like I'm trying to make myself feel better, but just as I'm listing the actual facts of what's the same and what's different, I started to feel totally different, right? So for example, list off some examples. What's the same if I look at relational patterns around this theme is I've been with people who are of very few words, right? If I ask a question, they answer, it's very succinct. And there's not much there. What's been the same is, I think, their ability to connect to that emotional place in their sharing. It hasn't been easy. And so if I'm going off of that, what's been the same is I've had to initiate most conversations, if not all, that lead us to some more emotional depth, right? That is all the same. What I noticed is if I keep orienting only to what's the same, I'm not feeling so great. I'm feeling sort of not so hopeful. I'm feeling a little bit annoyed and pissed off. And then I'm also questioning, what have I done wrong? Am I choosing the wrong people all the time? And like, have I not learned anything? Like, why am I not choosing something different if I know that I need this thing? None of it feels very good. And when I started doing what's different, I'm like, what's different is this person absolutely lights up when we have conversation together. And like, that hasn't always been the case with other people. What's different is this person, when I do ask questions, takes time to like thoughtfully think about it and share. And I can tell that they're excited to be connecting with me in that way. it doesn't feel like they're rolling their eyes thinking, oh my God, why are you asking another question? And like, when is this over? You know, they're actually delighting in it. What's different is this is a person who really, I can feel, wants me to have that experience of being met at that level, and like wants to practice and wants to engage. And, you know, there's a desire to create something in this realm together, and that it's not always on me to take us to that place. And all of a sudden, when I'm listing all the things that are different, like, I'm like, oh, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the same. And then I felt more hopeful, and I felt more open to possibility. And I felt like I could see not just the situation and the relationship more clearly, I could see the other person more clearly.
Yeah. And it's more expansive, right? The first part you described, discounting all of the same things to look at the different things, and how, so what you're reminding me of is when we're holding two emotions at once, you know, instead of just
Mhm.
going, oh, I'm fine, I'll ignore my anxiety and I'll lean into some sort of chipper focus. We're going to
Yeah.
hold both. And then that feels expansive instead of like we're dismissing part of ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And like, so I want to help use that as a bridge to how I see my clients use it. And I was working with someone this past week, and it was such a neat conversation we had. And I love when people have a new way to describe what's going on for them, right? So now the people that you and I work with have this language of what's the same and what's different,
Mhm.
right? So this person was telling me, you know, like, what's the same is that, like, I still don't feel completely regulated most of the time. I still feel like there's parts of my life that are kind of a mess, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah. And what's different? They said, well, what's different? A lot is different. Like, I notice more now when I'm getting pulled into the dark places. I can do the things like lay down on the ground, and that helps me just settle a little bit. Like before, like what's different is I have some tools that
Mhm.
I can use and also trust will help bring a shift to how I feel. What's different is I can tell myself, I can tell I actually know how to look for evidence that it's the situation is not as bad as it once was, right? What's different is I can actually name what's feeling off for me. And then my next question tends to be, how does it feel inside as you're telling me that you notice what's the same and what's different? And their face totally lights up. It's like, oh, things are different,
I have
right?
power.
Have power. Things are changing. One thing that I find so discouraging for people is when they believe that nothing has been changing,
Yeah.
that they haven't changed, that their situation hasn't changed at all, or how they feel about their situation or how they're handling their situation hasn't changed. And when you use large measures, like,
Mm.
do I feel regulated most of the time? Do I have my dream job? Am I in the best relationship of my life? Do I feel the best in my body? Am I, you know, fueling myself with the most nutritious food? I think you're going to be able to say for a long time, yep, still not happening. But if you're able to say, yes, what's the same is I'm still, like, for me for a long time, I'm still eating late at night and feeling gross when I do that. What's different is maybe I'm changing up what I'm eating late at night,
Mm.
or some of what I'm eating late at night, or I'm starting to eat a little bit less at night, or it's still night, but it's like 9:30 instead of 10:30.
Yeah.
And how does it feel to notice you're making those little changes? There's these differences. Oh, like
Yeah.
that feels really good. Those changes feel good, but it also feels good. Like you mentioned, like that I sense that I have some agency and some power and things are happening,
Mhm.
right? But if someone were to ask me, or if I were to, you know, be measuring my success or progress on, do you still eat late at night and do you still feel crappy in the morning?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I do.
Yeah. Too much of a bird's eye view there.
Yeah.
We're talking about clear seeing instead of like fear and shame seeing. And we're talking about how to notice what's actually in front of you instead of just hopping into old patterns, right?
Yeah.
We
And
we get this kind of thing a lot, especially people who are recovering from relationship trauma and anxiety. How will I ever trust again? how do I know I'm not going to just make the same old mistakes? And to me, it just seems completely obvious. It's like, well, even your cells are not the same cells. It's literally impossible that you'll do exactly the same thing. But that's too specific. What people are really meaning is, what if I fall into the same pattern again, right? And
Yeah.
the thing is, you might, and you're a different person now, and you have different tools, and you have different eyes to see with and ears to hear with. So it won't be the same. Something will be different.
Yes, and that is an idea that sometimes we can be open to and let land, and other times I find it's vague and abstract. And
Mhm.
that's what's cool about this tool is very specific. You know, if you practice using the prompt, what's the same is, right? Take a situation that you're not feeling super great about, you're not as progressed in the direction that you would like to be, and then use the prompt, something, what's the same is. Finish that sentence and then use the next prompt, what's different is. And even if you have to look for like the tiniest difference, but practice and then go back and forth with that prompt. My bet is if you practice growing this muscle, life is going to feel very different.
So much different. So much, like, we, I think, close the door on so much opportunity because we assume we know what's in front of us, but actually we're seeing through our little projection lenses. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and it's so frustrating? They anticipate what you're going to say, but that's not what you were going to say. And they're like jumping ahead and you're like, no, that's not where we were going. We had an episode a couple weeks ago where you started saying a sentence that my brain was completing already and being vaguely annoyed by. You were like, "We're going to stand up really straight." And I was like, oh, yes, she's about to talk about the ballerina with the string hanging in your posture. And so I was dismissing that because it was reminding me of my mother. And you even said string. And I was like, yeah, the string, we know. But it wasn't out of the top of the head, right? And I know enough of myself now to know what I'm in that, yeah, get on with it. I'm like, oh, I'm anticipating a future that isn't here yet. So I'm going to stop. And you actually said, no, a string from the middle of your belly. And I was present enough and paused enough to notice, okay, I'm doing this advanced mind reading thing. What's she actually going to say? And so then I was able to be with what you actually said, which gave me a completely different experience than I was having in my mind, right? The experience of
Mm-hmm.
what was happening in real life felt better and more pleasant. And this is happening like all the time for everybody.
Yes. Yes. And like if we apply same different to this in a bit of a different way, is like, what's the same is I'm going to tell you something to do, right? I did tell you something that to do. What's different is I told you something different to do.
Mhm.
Right. But if we latch on to and just hang with what's the same, she's going to tell me another thing to do. And what's even more the same is she's using the same word as my mother and she's using the same tone that my mother used and same. And then we just completely shut off to it.
Yeah.
Right. But if we can be like, oh, what's the same as she's describing a body connection practice that has something to do with posture, something to do with straightening, something to do with a string. What's different is she mentioned something about the belly and pulling forward. That's new.
Mm.
Let's be with that. And all of a sudden there's something, a new pathway available. Right.
Yes.
And so what's same and different is so important to be able to sharpen your skill of noticing what's the same and what's different.
Yeah. Huge. Could you also, like, I want people to understand how this applies in their relationships, in their dating, in their
Mhm.
arguments, like all of this stuff.
Well, I think this makes a huge difference in all of our relationships, or it can if you choose to use it and practice it. Because in just what I noticed in the shower today, doing that same different, and this is what I love. I'm doing it in the shower while I'm having a shower. Like, it's not like I'm taking this huge part of my day to have this huge, serious reflection time with myself, which I could. But also, like, you can be walking down the street thinking about this. You could be, like, I love tools that you could throw into your day easily.
Mm.
And so what it helps me do is being able to practice same different in this theme of emotional sharing and connecting when it relates to my partner. It allows me to see him more clearly for who he is, which I think is going to benefit every relationship. It allows me to see him more clearly in not just who he is as a person, but how he shows up, which I think also helps my ability to appreciate him more,
Mm.
right? It also shows me what's different about this dynamic that him and I have created. that I really cherish and value. It shows me what's different about how I'm navigating hard moments with myself, which makes me more hopeful of like, okay, like I've got this great person, and I've got what's the same is my mind can still take me to places that are dark and not helpful. What's different is I know how to notice it's happening, and I have some tools that I can practice, and I know how to apply the tools, and I end up feeling differently and more hopeful and more open and seeing him through a clearer lens. Right?
Which is basically the honeymoon phase. Like what you're describing, the joy of the honeymoon phase, aside from all the hormones and the fresh, new, sexy times, is that we're really paying attention. We're really seeking to understand this person and see everything that they do. And we're delighting in how different it is than, our previous loneliness or not honeymoon phase relationships, things like that. So the depth of paying attention to what's really here is, I think, really the key. We're breaking the patterns of not clear seeing.
Yes. And in this case, I'm using same, different, and what I've listed in differences are the things that are better and they're good feeling, and I want to remain connected to that. But sometimes you're going to notice that the things that you notice that are different are not great things and not good feeling things. And that's really important too, because sometimes we can get into imagining that everything is great when it really isn't great.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that we actually need to be, I think, more honest with ourselves and more clear in our seeing of what is actually happening, who is actually in front of us.
Totally.
Right.
The example you gave from the shower, like I can imagine, and I know I've been this person, and I know lots of people are this way. We want words of assurance. We want to be told that everything is fine, right? So I can imagine a situation where you might be faced with a guy who, instead of not communicating verbally about his emotions, says a whole bunch of words that sound great. And if you are not paying attention, you're just going to believe those words, right?
Yes.
Instead of going like, oh, actually, let me examine this and notice that the things he's saying and doing are not the same to each other.
Yes. Right. So if I can pick out past partner, current partner, like what's the same is eventually they both say something that feels really nice. Right. One says it a lot sooner,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like fluffy and feel good. The other is more measured and also feels good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's the same. And I've already even touched a little bit on the difference. What's different is now words match, actions match the words.
Mm-hmm.
What's different now is like I see consistency. I see that these words are not just fluffy and like said to diffuse the moment to make me happy. They're actually words that this person lives up to.
Yeah. He's communicating a ton to you non-verbally.
Which I have had to learn that is a form of love and care. Like, where is the love and care and reassurance and connection coming from ways other than words?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what's the same for me is that I still deeply value words. And what's becoming different for me is I'm practicing how to see love and care through other forms and
Mm-hmm.
connection through other forms. Right.
And
Where,
like
yeah.
emotional communication too, right? Like all the things you described that you saw that were different. What I heard was he was expressing emotions in ways that were not verbal and that you were able to then take in.
Mm-hmm. And like that was the thing is like when I just go to what's good and be like, oh yeah, that's really nice when he does this thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a really important skill to be able to have. But when you combine it with the what's the same and what's different, the what's good lands in an even juicier way, I find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Neat.
Right. So it's fun. I think everyone in your life, except for the people who want to deceive you, will probably enjoy being seen more clearly.
Definitely. Definitely. I remember with an ex, we were going ice fishing and I was really excited about it. And he thought I was all of his ex-girlfriends who secretly would have hated it and that I was harboring some secret ill will. And so I just didn't understand what was happening because he'd be like, oh yeah, I know you don't want to go do this. And I'd be like, no, babe, like I'm super into it. And eventually I just realized, I'm like, oh, and I actually said to him, I'm like, are you talking to ex-girlfriends or me right now? And he's like, oh yes, I'm talking to all the women of the world. I'm like, cool. Well, this one actually is excited to go ice fishing. So maybe we could just have a nice time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? I really think that that's a really good thing to notice, to ask yourself, am I talking to all of my exes or am I talking to the person in front of me?
Right? Because
Yeah.
it's really easy to turn love into like hatred and disdain in our minds. Like it's super easy to assume somebody means you ill or means you harm when maybe they just want to connect and have a beautiful time, but your mind is telling you another story. So being
Yeah.
able to pause and see what's actually here is so important and so expansive in life opportunities. And if you're not able to practice noticing things that are same and different in really non-charged ways outside of peak emotional relationship stuff,
Mhm.
it won't be as easy when you're in that peak relationship stuff. So for sure, do some noticing.
Yes. And maybe I'll throw in, maybe as a closing practice, I'll throw in a same different practice that's non-emotional. So you have something practical you can practice with. Yeah, I think it's a good self-check question. I mentioned earlier, like ask yourself, am I talking to my exes or who's in front of me? For me,
Mhm.
sometimes I have to ask myself, am I talking to my mother or my father or the person in front of me? Um,
Or God,
and what's that?
or God, or the moment.
When I think about what it's like to be on the receiving end, where someone is talking to you and you're like, you're not seeing me right now. Like you're seeing maybe me and 15 other people or three other people all smushed together, but you're really not seeing me. Like how yucky that feeling is. And I think it's a great gift that we could give to ourselves and the people who we're in relationship with, the ability to see them clearly in the moment. Right.
So maybe some cues would be helpful. Like I know there are things that human beings say when we're stuck not seeing clearly. Words
Mm-hmm.
like always and never, eye rolling, oh, here they go again. This always
Mm-hmm.
happens, those
Yeah.
kinds of words.
So
I
cute.
think it's natural and important for our pattern recognition tendencies are
Mm-hmm.
important for various biological and
Yeah.
practical reasons. And it makes
Yeah.
sense that we want to protect ourselves from relationship patterns that have felt painful in the past. And we're actually doing ourselves often more harm than good by lumping everybody into categories of patterns instead of seeing what's actually in front of us, which might be quite
Yeah.
simple and loving. Mhm.
Yes. So this is a great reminder of, in order to catch or help you start catching patterns that are not super helpful, to notice the language you start using, whether it's language you're saying out loud or the language of your mind, right? Which you've sort of prefaced with, hey, if we go into always, never, here we go again. And I think there's some general ones and then there's some personal, specific ones to each of us, right? So I notice for me, it's like when I have that see, look at that. I know I'm in it, because when I go, see, it's happening again, or look at that thing that they do,
Mhm.
it's usually not like a positive sparkling thing I'm highlighting. So I know that, and it could be something that this person is doing that's not helpful, but it's the energy that I'm bringing and the lens that I'm seeing that behavior through that definitely doesn't help the situation,
Yeah.
right? We're not saying don't notice and don't point out things that are happening that are not okay. We're just saying, like, what's the charge and what's the lens that you're viewing that through right now?
Yeah.
And is that helpful? Right. And so getting to know like what happens in your mind. There's someone in my life who their sort of key cheat sheet to note that, oh, I'm doing the thing again, is the phrase, what the F is wrong with you?
Right. Yeah. A good one.
When she begins to think that in her mind and sometimes even says it out loud, like half jokingly, like that's her cue that, oh, I'm in that place. I'm
Yeah.
in that place where if I'm not conscious and aware and intentional, I'm just going to keep making you wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And this making someone wrong business, I think it's of such value that we start noticing how good we are at that and when it's happening. And
Yeah.
the reason I mention this is I've been experimenting. Like I will be in connection with my person and like I'll watch and listen to what he's doing and what he's saying. And I can like track myself. I'm like, if I wanted to make this thing he just said or the look he's giving me wrong, I could totally do that. I would make this mean that, and I would make that thing that he said mean this. I would make that 3-second pause mean that. I'd make the fact that he just got up mean this. And like, he could be the total enemy. And what that shows me is the power of my mind, how fast and how ugly it can get.
Yeah.
And I could give myself the same exercise and be like, let's take everything he says and does, like the subtle and not so subtle, and frame it through a more generous lens right now. And I'd have a totally different narrative of what's happening and feel completely differently. And I shocked myself when I was like I play weird games with myself, but I shocked myself in like how real it could all feel. And also I could see that in past relationships, I haven't been as aware of that happening in real time.
Right.
Of when I start collecting all these moments of data and like making them all a little bit slightly wrong, and then feeling a certain way, and then saying something that I felt needed to be said, and maybe it did, but the way I would say it was not very generous, not very helpful, not very open-hearted. But it would feel all very justified because I had just spent 5 minutes or half an hour experiencing this person through that not very generous lens.
Very relatable.
Yes.
You've given me a fun idea, which I think I will incorporate, and that is to go around and catch people being helpful and good. Being like, ha, I knew it. I knew you'd be nice to me.
I think it's great because we're so good at playing that game in the opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Really
right?
relatable. I noticed I put some business cards in various business cardy locations around town, and I went to go check on them. I was like, dutifully, I'm like, this is what I will do. I will put them there, and then I will see how many have been taken. And then I went to go look at them, and I noticed my inner dialogue was going like, oh, maybe you were supposed to get like permission from someone to post these on the community board. Maybe someone's going to be annoyed. Maybe people didn't want to see your business card. And then I was like, I don't even want to go look now. In the past, I was like, I'll go, and if they've been taken, I'll know 2 people have my business cards now and maybe want my services. But instead, my brain was going, oh, someone just took them down because they hate you. What's the point of any of this now?
What's the point of any of this, right? I always say, what is a more neutral, even if you don't want to go with more positive thought or more empowering thought, what's a more neutral thought?
Yeah.
Because you actually don't know either way, because it could have been 10 people who were delighted in seeing your face and name and what you offer, take your card, and they tucked it away and they're going to pull it out sometime and reach out to you. It could be like one person who was like, I hate her face, I'm going to take them and trash them all.
Yeah.
And like, you actually don't know what happened to any of them.
Yeah.
But depending on what you choose to make that mean, that's either going to leave you feeling decent and neutral, or slightly empowered, or really horrible about yourself, like somewhere on the spectrum of feeling great and horrible. And the reality is, unless you put in a surveillance camera to check that spot, but also what happens after that spot, and also know the internal intentions of someone, like, you're not actually going to know the answer of what happened to them.
And like, that's true across the board for almost everything in life, I'm going to say. We really can't know. So we can make it up. Most of the time, we're making it up. And often we're making things up in ways that don't feel good and are unnecessarily painful and, self-degrading.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that.
That's no fun. That's no fun.
Yeah.
Let's just assume good intentions.
Yeah. And being able to see clearly what's in front of us.
So looking at what's the same and what's different. And do you want to walk people through a what's the same and what's different practice that doesn't really elicit any emotion or intensity? Okay. So I'm looking at, I would say, choose 2 things. Give me any 2 things. And because we like to be body connected, right? You can do this practice without body connection, but this is an extra bonus layer. Maybe feel the seat that you're sitting on while you're doing this. Maybe notice your breath. Take a look at these 2 things, and one simple sentence, something that's the same, is
about the 2 things.
Yes. So do you want to say yours out loud? Can you tell us what the 2 things are?
Yeah, one's a blanket and one is a light stand. And so my first thought about what's the same about them is that they're both things.
Yes, but that works. They're both things. That's accurate.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do find that you have to go to these really sort of easy, low hanging fruit things, especially if they're things that are quite opposite. But also, if you're new to this, if your muscle of seeing what's the same or what's different is new, it's okay to go for low hanging fruit.
Totally. It's
But
just a
you're still
practice.
practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. You're training your eyes to notice that you're not always seeing the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these
So,
two things
yeah.
both have a color.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And what's different? Something that's different about them is?
They have different colors to each other. Also, something different is that one is soft and fuzzy and one is hard and metal.
Yeah. Right. And so you can go with alternating, like something that's the same as, something that's something that's different is between these two objects. You could just do one round, but you could do a few rounds. And you might notice at some point where it feels like a little bit like a game and sort of fun, and you sort of feel a little bit proud of yourself of like, oh, that was a cool difference, or that was a cool similarity that I found there. And that's a sign that that skill's getting sharper for you.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I'm looking at a plant and I'm looking at my doll here, my Jelly Bing doll. And let's see, something that's the same is they're both on top of a hard surface. And like that one sort of excites me because that's not usually a similarity. That's not it's an easy similarity to see. I see it, but my mind wouldn't have necessarily noted that as a similarity. So I can tell, oh, like my muscle's getting sharper.
Yeah.
I'm starting to notice things.
Almost like there's like an unwillingness. I can imagine in the past if someone had asked what's the same, I'd be like, nothing's the same. These are just totally different things, you know? And yeah, we become more flexible.
Yes. And like when you're like, nothing's the same, these are the same. Well, that's the surprise, it's the same energy you're taking to your partner or your boss or your children or your life or your progress in life. Exactly the same energy.
Yeah.
Right. So notice the energy you bring to these two objects, and you might get some information about what is a general pattern of energy you take into your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Some confronting information. And when that information confronts, I think we can remind you to feel your bum and feel your feet and take a breath and be with them.
Yes. And I want to finish my game. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, but I want to practice the difference. Okay. A difference is one of them has a face and one does not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also quite delighted about that because that probably wouldn't have been one I mentioned in the past, but it's true. And what's neat is you start speaking in factual language. And a lot of where we get in trouble, I think, in relationships and connecting and conflict is we can't differentiate between facts and feelings and, like judgments and fears and all the things where they're all lumped in together, but we state them as facts.
Right.
And then that tends to elicit defensiveness in the other person and they shut down or they add fire to the situation. Right. But when I can say my doll has a face, my plant does not have a face. Sometimes I might see faces in the leaves, but it doesn't have the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the eyebrows that are on my doll. That's a fact.
Yes.
The plant is a living thing and my plastic doll is not.
Yeah. And the quality of relaying those facts, like if we harken back to the energy of a moment ago, it might have been like, well, they don't have a face. The leaves don't have faces. Okay, that's one energy to bring in, which is very different than reporting facts. So practice is the point.
Mm-hmm. And notice that because, we've shared this with people where it's like a bit of a struggle in the beginning, or it's a bit of met with resistance, like, what's the point of this? But notice if you have a hard time finding what's similar about two objects and what's different, what is happening in your relationships? What is happening in the way you relate to yourself and how you see yourself? Like, how hard are you on yourself when you're not able to see what's the same as a few years ago and what's different? What's the same as, last month and what's different? And that's what I really enjoy about this practice, this tool, is that this not only helps you see the other person more clearly, but it's a way to see yourself more clearly. It's a way to see a situation more clearly. It's a way to see a relationship more clearly. It's a way to see a potential person, place, thing, situation, relationship you might want to get into more clearly.
Mm-hmm. It's graceful.
Yes. It's graceful. There's a simplicity to it. I find that what's common with people who are having a hard time in life, in relationship, is it feels like a struggle. Things feel hard. Naming what's the same, one thing that's the same and one thing that's different about two objects doesn't have to be a struggle, right? It might feel uncomfortable, but it'll feel easier with practice. And there was a time where we used this with someone to say, we practice with objects first. Then we practiced with, I said, tell me about your two children. What's the same and what's different about them? And that was also, pretty okay to do. And then it was, tell me about the relationship you have with each child. What's something that's the same and what's something that's different? And then it became, tell me about the struggle that you have with each child. What's the same and what's different? And so, there's so many ways to play with this. Tell me about your deepest fears with each child and what's the same and what's different, right? And so you can take it from something that has zero emotional charge and zero intensity to something that's the thing that is most charged, and you can use this. But there's so many things that you can use to practice with before you ever try to or expect that you can use this in the dynamic that's the most charged for you.
Thanks, Chi-Chi.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Okay. Did we do a closing practice?
We use that as closing, but I want to add one thing. When working with couples, this practice is really helpful too. Because when you can say to each other, what I notice the same in our struggle is this. What I notice is different about our struggle is this. What I notice is the same in how you show up in these hard moments is this. What I notice has been different about how you show up in these hard moments is this. You have a totally different dynamic with each other.
Yeah, you stop pigeonholing each other and make space for reality and spirit and each other.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, simple practice of looking at two objects can help you navigate those much harder things in relationship.
Yes, I love it. And they make it second nature, right? So instead of our natural tendency to pigeonhole, we will, over time and practice, just become naturally more gracious and expansive and permissive for people to be who they are.
Yeah, I like that. That feels good to me.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Chi-Chi.
Okay.
Anything else you want to say?
I think that's it. Go practice and play with same and different.
Yeah. Thank you guys for being here. We will see you next week. As always, please do follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.